Colorado just delayed an AI law 6 weeks before it was supposed to take effect, and a federal judge already blocked what was left of it anyway. On May 14th, 2026, Governor Polis signed a bill that basically gutted Colorado's original AI regulation and pushed the date back from June 30th to January 1st, 2027. But that's kind of irrelevant now because on April 27th, a federal magistrate already stayed enforcement after XAI sued and the Department of Justice jumped in to help kill the law. We're sitting here on June 29th, watching one of the first state-level attempts to regulate AI accountability just completely fall apart in real time. And it's collapsing precisely because nobody can agree on the question at the heart of this whole thing. When AI screws up, everyone's first instinct is to blame the tech company. That makes intuitive sense. OpenAI built GPT, Google built Gemini, Anthropic built Claude. If their system hallucinates medical advice, or denies someone's insurance claim incorrectly, or helps someone build something dangerous, shouldn't the company that made it be liable? That's the public sentiment, and honestly, it's where most lawmakers start too. Big tech has deep pockets, massive legal teams, and a track record of moving fast and breaking things, so they're the obvious target. But once you start pulling on that thread, it unravels fast. Because when you actually ask who's responsible for a specific harm caused by a specific AI system in a specific context, the answer stops being obvious pretty much immediately. The EU's AI Act is about to become real in a way that abstract policy frameworks aren't. It entered into force back in August 2024, but the full enforcement kicks in on August 2nd, 2026, 2 months from now. Some pieces already went live in February this year, like the ban on certain AI practices and basic literacy requirements, but the big compliance deadlines are coming up fast. And what's interesting is the EU took a risk-based approach instead of just pointing at tech companies. High-risk AI systems face strict requirements, but the responsibility isn't automatically dumped on the developer. It depends on the use case, the context, who deployed it, who modified it. It's more nuanced than most people realize, which is probably why it's also more complicated to enforce. Let's say an AI system makes a mistake that harms someone. First question, who built it? That seems straightforward until you realize modern AI systems aren't built by one entity in a vacuum. You've got the foundation model developer, OpenAI, Meta, whoever. Then you've got companies that fine-tune those models, developers who build applications on top of them, third parties who integrate them into existing software. If a hospital uses an AI diagnostic tool that was fine-tuned by a health tech startup using a foundation model from Google, and it misses a cancer diagnosis, who's liable? The foundation model probably wasn't trained specifically for medical imaging. The startup customized it. The hospital decided to use it. And that's before we even get to who provided the data it was trained on. Training data is where this gets really uncomfortable, because nobody wants to be responsible for it, but it's arguably where a lot of AI failures originate. If an AI system produces biased outputs, is that the fault of the model architecture or the training data that reflected existing societal biases? If it generates something harmful, did it do that because of a flaw in the model or because it was trained on harmful content scraped from the internet? The humans who created that original content didn't know it would be used to train AI. The companies that scraped it often did so without explicit permission. The model developers argue they're just building tools that reflect the data they're given. So who's responsible for the fact that the training data was biased, incomplete, or toxic in the first place? As far as I can tell, everyone's trying to pass that buck. Then you've got the deployment side, which is a whole separate question. A company or individual decides to use an AI system in a specific context. That's a choice with consequences. If a business uses AI to screen job applications and it discriminates against certain candidates, is the AI developer liable, or is it the company that chose to use it for hiring decisions without proper oversight? If someone uses an AI chatbot to generate medical advice and follows it instead of seeing a doctor and something goes wrong, Is that on the chatbot developer or the person who decided to treat it as a medical authority? The companies building these tools say they're general purpose technologies, and they can't control every possible use case. The people using them say they trusted the technology to work as advertised. Both have a point, which is exactly the problem. There's a term that keeps coming up in AI ethics papers: the responsibility gap. It's academic language for a pretty simple problem. Our traditional ethical and legal frameworks assume you can trace harm back to a human decision maker. If a product hurts someone, we sue the manufacturer. If a doctor makes a mistake, there's medical malpractice law. If a driver causes an accident, they're liable. But with AI, especially the more autonomous or complex it gets, you can't always draw that line cleanly. The system learned from data, developed emergent behaviors nobody explicitly programmed, made decisions using processes even its creators don't fully understand. So when it causes harm, our existing framework of who should be held responsible doesn't map neatly onto it. That's the gap. And it's not theoretical anymore. Courts are dealing with real cases right now where this matters. Product liability law works great when a toaster catches fire because of a manufacturing defect. It doesn't work as well when an AI model trained on 1 billion web pages generates advice that indirectly leads to harm. Negligence law requires you to prove someone failed to exercise reasonable care. What's reasonable care when you're deploying a technology that even experts don't fully understand the failure modes of? Strict liability holds manufacturers responsible regardless of fault for certain dangerous products. Should AI systems be treated like dangerous products across the board, even when most of the time they work fine? The legal concepts we have were built for a world where causation was traceable, where you could point to a specific human action or omission. AI breaks that model in ways that make lawyers extremely uncomfortable, which is part of why we're seeing this regulatory chaos. Colorado's law, before it got gutted and delayed and blocked, was actually trying to address some of this. It focused on algorithmic discrimination. Basically, if an AI system made consequential decisions about people in areas like employment, housing, credit, and it discriminated, someone had to be accountable. The original version put obligations on both developers and deployers, which made sense given the chain of responsibility problem. But it got watered down significantly in the May 14th revision. And then XAI sued, arguing it was unconstitutional. And the DOJ jumped in to support that challenge. And now a federal judge has paused the whole thing. What's fascinating is that even a relatively modest state-level attempt to assign responsibility is meeting this level of resistance. That tells you how high the stakes are and how much the industry does not want clear liability rules. On March 20th this year, the White House released a national policy framework for artificial intelligence. It's meant to guide Congress toward a unified federal approach instead of a patchwork of state laws. Then, on June 4th, just a few weeks ago, 2 House members released a discussion draft of something called the Great American Artificial Intelligence Act. Neither of these actually solve the liability question. They're frameworks, recommendations, discussion drafts. They punt the hard decisions down the road. The White House document talks about principles like transparency and accountability, but doesn't specify who holds the bag when something goes wrong. The Gaia is still in draft form and likely to change. What's becoming clear is that the federal government knows it needs to do something, but has no consensus on what that something should be. So we're stuck in this weird limbo. Given the legislative stalemate, my guess is that AI liability is going to get hashed out in court, case by case, which is a slow and messy way to do it, but might be the only realistic path forward. Someone will get harmed by an AI system, they'll sue, and a judge will have to decide whether existing law applies or needs to be stretched or just doesn't cover it. We're already seeing the beginning of this. The XAI lawsuit against Colorado is part of it. There will be more, lots more. And over the next few years, courts will build up a body of precedent that might eventually clarify who's responsible in different scenarios. It's not the clean, comprehensive solution a good piece of legislation could provide, but when Congress can't agree and states get blocked by federal courts, litigation becomes the de facto regulatory mechanism. That's where we are. So who ends up holding the bag? Honestly, it depends. And that's the unsatisfying answer we're stuck with for now. If the harm is clearly traceable to negligent deployment, probably the organization that deployed it. If it's a fundamental flaw in how the model was designed or trained, probably the developer, assuming you can prove it. If it's an emergent behavior nobody could have predicted, well, that's the responsibility gap in action, and nobody really knows. What I do know is that the reflex to just blame big tech oversimplifies a genuinely complicated problem, with multiple actors making multiple decisions at different points in the chain. We need better frameworks, but building them requires admitting that this doesn't fit neatly into existing categories. And until we do that, we're going to keep seeing this regulatory chaos play out in real time. If this kind of breakdown is something you want more of, a like genuinely helps. And subscribe if you're into this sort of thing.